Whoever has the better ADC on their team will always win the game. Okay, yeah, that's a lie. But it definitely does help your chances of winning. Regardless of how bad your support is, how bad your teammates are, or how many kills the enemy assassin has before the lane phase ends, one thing is certainly true. If you are always better than the other ADC in your elo, then you will eventually climb. It's also a fun goal you can have in League that you do have a lot of control over. In this guide, we will be isolating the easiest ways that can guarantee you are always the better ADC in your games. So stay tuned, as you're sure to not only level up your skills by watching this guide, but also have a way less frustrating experience when trying to climb as ADC. Our first tip is to stay cool, especially when you're paired with a support who is so outrageously bad that legitimately makes you wonder if they're a bot, or at least how on earth they accumulated enough MMR to be paired with you. For some reason, this is just a thing you have to deal with. Sometimes your supports are completely fine, and then the next game you get one that makes you want to claw your eyes out. Here we have our expert Hector playing Ezreal and is matched with a lovely cute little Lulu, and they're versus a Rumble support this game. Here, take a quick notice of the very obvious occurrences on the map. First, they spot Rumble in top trying to do a little cheese play. Then they spot a mid rotating towards bottom lane. With all that info, it totally makes sense for Lulu to ward. Whew, they narrowly escaped the ADC 1v2 cheese. Nice looking out, Lulu. Okay, it's already clear Lulu is as blind as a bat, wasting her first ward like that. But anyway, that is far from the worst of her crime she's about to commit. Rumble walks into lane and starts trading immediately. If you use skill cap, then you should know there's no way the Rumble can push like this into two people on his own. You should destroy him for doing this. But Lulu just walks away to vibe nice and far away. If the lane was wider, she'd probably have ventured off screen. But Hector knows they should be fighting and punishing, which gets Lulu interested. He even heals to signal that they should go all in here. Hector could have just pulled back earlier to settle for a kill on Rumble, but the outcome is a nice little double kill for Lulu, resulting in a 1-for-2 exchange in kills. Not bad, right? The Lulu trolls a bit, queuing the wave and pushing it, but she realizes her mistake and just begins to recall. So far, so good. But what you're about to see will really showcase the mental warfare inflicted on ADCs by their own supports. Hector notices some strange movement on his minimap. Lulu is up to something, but what? When talking to Hector, here's what he had to say about what happened next. So things look good, that is, until I saw some funny business on the minimap. Seems the Lulu canceled her recall to push the wave even more. Clearly, I'm a bit tilted about this, but thankfully she's leaving it now. That is, until she canceled her recall to queue it again. Okay, at least she's still got full health and mana. We can just crash the waves together and I'll be fine. And then she just leaves! He then yelled some stuff about needing a raise for this low elo torture we put him through every day, but you don't need to hear any of that. So any ADC main knows just how incredibly triggering that has to be, right? Hector is left alone with the wave pushing away from him. How could you not be upset here? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about staying cool. The Lulu is clearly not great, to put it lightly, but Hector knows that if his support is this bad, the enemy support can't be much better. This is the most critical part about carrying games in low elo. You have to deal with terrible teammates, but so does the enemy ADC. Typically, whoever responds better to these circumstances will be the one to come out on top. Hector ends up getting zoned for a little bit as he's 1v2 in the lane, but he keeps a cool head and preserves his own HP by conceding a few minions. But then as Lulu is finally coming back to lane, he exploits a big mistake many players make in lower brackets. He knows that if his opponents don't directly see Lulu on their screen, that they won't actually think about the fact that she's coming back or in the area. So he walks up and pretends he's still in lane 1v2, and the Rumble, who is still level 1, falls for his trap. With the wave advantage and more overall levels, this fight is incredibly one-sided. Eventually they take down Varus and the lane is won. This is the big difference maker you need to learn. When his support griefed Hector, he didn't lose his mind. He didn't flame or spam ping the Lulu, which could have tilted her and made the game hard. And he kept his cool and saved HP while she left lane. On the other hand, Varus should instantly know this all-in is terrible. Yes, this play by Rumble is awful, which means that Varus should not even try to help out. His best chance of carrying this game would be to ping Rumble off, and if he doesn't listen, Varus needs to keep his cool, let Rumble lose a chunk of HP and preserve his own. That's how you climb as ADC in lower elos, staying chill and dealing with the terrible decisions your teammates make. This may have you thinking though, okay cool, the Lulu is bad, but the Rumble was definitely worse. The enemy support won't always be this bad and easy to exploit. True, sometimes you'll have a bad support and the enemy one will seem pretty competent. What do you do then? The thing to keep in mind is that ADC players will tunnel vision way too much on what they want to do, not what their supports can do. And so our second tip to always being the better ADC is to match your support skill level. An example would be during this game, Hector on Lucian has yet another annoying support. Lucian and Yuumi as a duo dominate this matchup early versus Samira and Zilean, but Hector's Yuumi is the type of player you've all experienced as well. This Zilean walks up to trade 1v2 and the Yuumi just stares at him instead of auto-attacking along with Lucian. All you know just how much it sucks to have a teammate like this. The problem many of you fall for is that you'll immediately tilt here and begin forcing the issue, in spite of what your support is capable of. Like Dravens who refuse to accept that they have a Sona who will never help them trade, or Caitlyn's who permanently shove despite their support's terrible vision placement. The tip here is to try and match how your support wants to play, what it seems they're capable of, and not to tunnel vision on what you want to do so much. Remember, your teammate is the same elo as you for a reason. They're surely competent at something, right? It's often in your best interest to try and sync up at what your support is good at instead of focusing too much on what your own win condition is. So what positives can Hector find in this Yuumi? Well, at the very least, she's not auto-attacking the wave and ruining it like the previous Lulu. Somehow, that's a massive positive in low elo. She may not be auto-attack trading or helping to push, but she is spamming heals and her Q off cooldown, landing a bit of poke. She's also not making any lane-losing mistakes that Hector has to try and salvage or something, right? It means that he can stay full HP and wait for opportunities later on. So you play with what you got. In this case, Hector can still play to poke rather than going for burst trades. For example, as he gets back to lane here, if he trusted Yuumi, Hector could dash in and go for a nice trade. Instead, he plays cautiously and just lands a Q for poke. Hector knows Yuumi won't be super proactive, but at the very least, she'll press the spells on her keyboard. Once he lands another Q, Zilean is in kill range. He dashes in, Yuumi presses Ignite and Q, and they score a kill. And here's a situation where they should be able to kill the Samira too. After shielding Hector, Yuumi could just hop off again and auto-attack, but she refuses to do so. So Hector stays calm, matches his support skill, and backs off. And that's another way for winning with a bad support. Play off what they can do instead of focusing too much on what the optimal play would be. And by the way, teaching how to carry with the worst supports is what we specialize in at SkillCapped. This guide is helpful, but it's nothing compared to the Challenger courses we've created at SkillCapped that will fast-track your climb as ADC in Season 13 without the headache. Keep in mind, it's super slow and unrealistic to learn just from high elo streams and pro play because ADCs don't play with the teammates you do. The game is totally different in Diamond and below, so you need to play differently to high elo players in order to carry despite having bad teammates. This is exactly what our guides specialize in, and is why we're the only service able to offer an improvement guarantee because our courses really do work. So check us out after this. For our third topic, we've got one more support-related tip you need to know, which is to always keep in mind your support's win condition. We cover the two win conditions for engage and range supports at SkillCapped all the time, but here's a refresher. With range supports, you want to play for a minion advantage. This enables them to play up in the lane and land their spells while having a minion buffer to prevent all-ins. With engage type supports, you often want to keep the wave around the middle of the lane, allowing your engage support to find engages so you can follow up. Knowing this, let's watch a lane where one of the ADCs clearly plays around this concept and the other doesn't. Varus begins this lane phase by securing the early push lead so he and Nautilus can get level 2 first. With their spike, Varus slows Neela only for his support to miss their hook. Not ideal, but it happens. Take stock of the level of respect that the enemy duo has shown, and how aggressively Varus has positioned this lane phase so far. Now he crashes the wave, which will cause a bounce back slow push. Consider all that pressure Varus had. Now let's see how everything changes. Because Neela and Lux are so close to their tower, even though this Nautilus hook lands, look how little impact it had. Did you see how Hector is not really interested in following up on the hooks right now either? He's just standing really passively, not hitting the wave or pressuring either. You're about to see how these two players in this lane are super clueless about their win condition. First, Nautilus once again hooks in. Even if that had landed on Lux, they'd be fighting on the enemy wave near their tower. You can't all in here. So Nautilus will eat a huge chunk of damage, which would have been a massive mistake. Thankfully, the enemy Neela decides to pay one back and dashes past her own defensive wave, right into Hector and Nautilus. She dies immediately, obviously. Knowing the basic win condition you should follow with every support is incredibly OP for winning lane and solo queue. Think about it like this: as long as you know your win condition, only your support can throw your lane. Meanwhile, there is a chance that both the enemy players have zero idea what to play for and throw the lane themselves. You're literally doubling your chances of randomly winning just by following the basic guidelines we talk about in our guides. Moving on, something else we notice about ADC players in Platinum and below is how inconsistent they are about pushing their advantages. When you have a good ADC with any little advantage, they will pressure it as hard as possible. But low-rated players often don't even know they have an advantage, don't know how to push it, or are too afraid to get their hands dirty. Let's show you an example of what this looks like. Here, we have Hector on Jhin versus this Caitlyn, and unlike the other examples, he's actually going to play really poorly. First off, he goofed and took heal versus Lux and Caitlyn, which is already a big mistake. This is a combo lane, and heal is definitely not going to help versus that. But still, he manages to set up an all-in with his blitz. Unfortunately, we immediately see the impact of his poor choice. If he'd either dodged the root or had cleanse for it, this would be an immediate first blood. Not the end of the world though. They crash the wave, and now it'll begin bouncing back like in the Varus example. This means that Caitlyn and Lux have the upper hand, just like the previous Neela and Lux did. Normally you just have to play patient here as Jhin, but this Lux is going to destroy Hector's hopes of recovering. He literally walks into her binding and takes another huge chunk of damage. A little later on, she lands another E on him and is genuinely looking like support diff. Caitlyn would have no right to complain now if she loses this lane with how hard Lux is owning. Something we should make note of is that throughout this process, Caitlyn and Lux got like 20 seconds to see that the enemy Diana is up in top skirmishing. So what comes next has literally zero excuse. Caitlyn knows how low Hector is. She's got the wave advantage playing towards her win condition, her Lux seems competent, and she just bases. Yeah, she didn't have the map awareness to realize that she can literally win the game right here. Now, don't think this mistake is the only reason we're saying that low-rated ADCs are bad at punishing mistakes. Here's what comes next. Hector tries to seize this opportunity created by the enemy team and crash the wave so he can get a good recall timer off. Sadly, his blitz abandons him to go rotate to the river encounter, and this tilts him out of his mind. So he stays here, tries to crash on his own, and fails to do so. He then just hands over a kill for no reason. Okay, so Caitlyn just saw Hector literally kill himself to crash the wave. This should make her following decision as obvious as it can possibly get. So what do you think she should do here? Yes, this is the most obvious freeze setup ever. She's nearly full HP, doesn't need to base, and can easily drag the wave to freeze. Nope, that would be silly, wouldn't it? Let's push instead. Hector may have died, but his wish is granted for no reason, and he comes back to the wave pushing into him. Somehow, we're not done though. Getting back to lane, Hector is visibly tilted and begins to try an ego 1v2 both the Caitlyn and Lux. It was going alright until he messed up his spacing and took a headshot to the face for no reason. And another E by Lux really seals the deal, chunking him to half HP, and he's got no potions to sustain back up with. So let's break down Caitlyn's win conditions. She and Lux are a poke-based lane that want to maintain the push lead to slowly whittle Jhin and Blitz out of lane. It's literally being handed to her right now, so it can't get any easier. Not only that, but Diana at this time is showing again on the map. There's no jungle interference to even worry about. All she has to do is walk up with this wave and pressure with it. Then she can crash and deny a ton of minions too. What does Caitlyn do instead? Yep, it's time to recall again. With no pressure on him, Hector cleans up the wave at his tower and pings his Blitz to punish. For the final nail in the coffin, notice how Hector walks up here compared to how Blitz does. Hector clearly wants to mind game and pretend they have no vision, whereas Blitz doesn't have a care in the world and is making his intentions as clear as daylight. Caitlyn and Lux could easily respond to this and win the fight with their lead right now, but instead, Caitlyn fully commits her recall, leaves her Lux to die, and has thrown every massive lead handed to her. This is what we're talking about when we say that marksman players Platinum and below don't punish nearly as hard as they should. Maybe you're not as blind as Caitlyn, but you're very likely letting a ton of game-winning opportunities slip by you, which a higher elo ADC would never allow. Look, it may be hard to accept, but most of us just need to come to terms with it. Time's arrow will keep marching forward relentlessly. We all have to accept the inevitable outcome that awaits us. Yes, exactly. The enemy Hecarim is fed before the lane phase has ended, and now he's killing you over and over. For multiple reasons, Hector on Kai'Sa is not having a fun time this game. This happens. You're not always going to get to win early on. However, look at Hector's decision making after this next play. He sees Hecarim die in bot, then he bases and heads to top. Arriving there, he fights the Riven, who is just as useless as he is. He manages to get a flash, but sadly gets away. Now he's got a choice to make. That fed Hecarim may have died, but he's still strong, and he's also not shown on the map since he died. A simple rule to follow is that the enemy jungler is most likely going to go to the opposite side of where you saw them, since they'll have camps up in that area. So since Hecarim died bottom, he might have top side camps up and paths toward there. Pushing up here is a death sentence, and yet Hector pushes up anyway. He's clearly aware of the danger, but proceeds regardless. This is a super important concept to keep in mind. When you're behind, you have to take risks to get back into the game, especially as an ADC. You need to farm, that's what your role does. The risk is that if he dies here, he'll still be useless and give a bit of gold over to the Hecarim. But if he gets lucky, he gets to keep farming and amass more resources so he can come back into the game. It seems like a very small decision, but this ended up mattering a lot. Hector got quite a few waves and the enemy gromp from that risky play. Being okay with taking risks like that is how he slowly but surely farmed his way back up to relevancy this game. It won't always work out, and you may often just die more and more, but if you're okay with that outcome, then you'll be able to come back even from crazy deficits and still carry games you thought were hopeless. Our sixth tip is about ADC players, but not about being a marksman. You see, we believe that ADCs are by far the role most stubborn in League about adapting their picks in draft. Sometimes you can literally auto-win a game by picking anything other than an ADC. For example, take a look at this draft so far. Look at this enemy comp. Raise your hand, lads! How many of you would instantly dodge this champion select? Yeah, that comp looks like hell for most marksmen to play against. So rather than drafting an ADC, Hector considers his options. His team is AP heavy, so instead of Swain, he goes for an AD bot laner like Jax. This may seem really troll to many of you, but he's literally just won the game with zero effort. Take a look. Just like every other example, his support turbo griefs and literally just walks into Pyke and Varus to die completely for free. But as all of us know, bruisers are Riot's favorite child. Hector is just going to focus the wave, hit level 2, and then stat check the Varus, running him down completely on his own. Other types of champions are definitely playable in bottom, even in Challenger. It's not just a low elo thing. And you could have so many other ways of carrying games if you just adapted your picks from time to time. For example, what marksman could ever set up an engage like this versus a Fed Aurelia and a Hecarim? You will be open to a ton of new ways of carrying if you're just willing to diversify your pool from typical ADCs. Many of you may be concerned about the learning curve required to play a bunch of new champions, but let's be real, none of what we're about to recommend you takes any skill required to how hard it is to play a marksman. So you can just roll your face on the keyboard and win games on these types of champions. So our tip is simple. If you see enemy comps with lots of assassins or enemy divers that seem like hell to play against, then here's some picks that you can pivot to. Mages like Swain or Morgana, tanks like Mundo, Cho'Gath, or Zac, and even bruisers like Jax, Renekton, Set, and Urgot are all easily playable in bot lane. We really suggest adding like 1 or 2 of these to your champion pool for much easier climbing when you're versus a threatening comp. Our final and 7th tip that you really need to incorporate into your gameplay is to stop panicking when someone is running at you. We get it, ADCs are frail and not the best duelists, but that doesn't mean you just instantly drop dead anytime another type of class is near you. Good ADCs constantly check the threat levels of enemy champions in 2 ways, by pressing tab and seeing how strong someone actually is, and keeping track of cooldowns. Most classes need their important spells to genuinely one-shot you, which means you can often play very dangerously if you're keeping track of these 2 things. For example, while Hector is dead here, he takes stock of what is happening to his team. He sees Fiora use her ultimate to fight Nami. Once he spawns, he runs bottom to where Fiora is pushing. As he gets there, he immediately clicks on Fiora and checks her items. She's strong, but low on resources and still has no ultimate, so he knows he can chase her down. Even with this overwhelming advantage, he still lost around half his HP finishing her off. We're definitely aware of the disadvantage you're in by trying to duel others, but it's definitely possible by tracking their items and cooldowns. A little after, he spots Master Yi running towards him in the river. Notice his immediate instinct, which is to get the hell out of there. This should be your #1 priority whenever you see someone running at you. Every ADC knows what it's like trying to fight a Fed Yi 1v1. It's not pretty and you literally have no chance. But as he runs, Hector calms down, reviews Yi's items, and assesses his own strength. He's got 2 summoners, he can lifesteal off the wave, and Yi is very weak. He knows he's got the upper hand. He stays bottom, pretending he's not aware that Yi is here. Since everyone thinks every ADC is a free kill, Yi comes in and offers himself up on a silver platter. This is how you actually duel other classes and hard carry games. It's not mechanics. Your instinct should always be to run to safety or to play with your team. But when you get the chance to assess the situation, you'll often find that there's many fights you can potentially take based on how weak your opponents are, or what cooldowns they may or may not have. Alright guys, remember to check out Skillcapped if you want to start climbing stupidly fast as ADC. We have the world's best courses waiting for you right now that teach you everything you need to know that will make your climb so much easier and more enjoyable. And if you don't climb at least 5 divisions when actively using Skillcapped, you can claim a refund, so there's literally no risk if you're serious about improving. Thanks for watching.